So you start out easy. Capital is heterogeneous. Well, who would disagree with that? Okay, of course it is. But you might come back with the claim that, well, so is labor and so is land. Right? So why is capital being heterogeneous such a big deal? So aren't labor and land homogeneous too? Well, yes, they are. So we go to the next step. Capital is radically heterogeneous. That sounds like something Ludwig Lockman would write, okay? And I'll go a step forward and say, well, we could ask just how radical is capital heterogeneous, okay? And the answer is it's dimensionally heterogeneous. We just don't have the dimensions that we would like to have to give a meaningful measure of capital. And let me elaborate by giving you a fill-in-the-blank assignment. Here it is. And you can see that the sentences are all alike except what goes in that blank. So not all what? Well, units. We need some units in there. Okay, what are the units? Start at the top. Worker hours. Okay, that's standard. Now, I'm allowing for labor to be heterogeneous because it says not all are alike. Okay, that means they're heterogeneous. But at least we have a unit where we can indicate just what the units are and realize that some worker hours are more productive than others and so on, but they're worker hours. And how about land? What do we do here? Acres, or we could say acre years. You see that in some textbook, and that would be more in line with worker hours and labor and acre years. But land is heterogeneous too, which means not all acres of land are alike. Now we get into the real problem. Not all what of capital are alike. What would you say? Well, look at what's there very closely, and you can see one way that textbook authors treat this. They just remove the parentheses. Okay. Not all units of capital are alike. Well, I mean, you know, if you're reading through that at 11:30 or midnight in your dorm, you read right past it and say, oh yeah, units, yeah. What are they? You don't know, okay? Not all units are alike. So if you're taking notes, write down unit is not a unit, okay? Now, I've become sensitized in the literature to see what else people have. We could look at some say doses, some doses of capital. Well, how big is a dose? What else we got? Chunks and hunks, okay? And you can look at some other units and see if any gallons or whatever. You can't see anything that would work. And if you look at these units that are used, you're kind of leery that they would work. Let me show you. There's a dose. Could you measure capital that way? Okay. How about a hunk? I mean, some hunks are bigger than other hunks, all right? Or some chunks are bigger than other chunks. And what about a hunk? That's human capital, I guess. Okay. Now, let's get to two combatants here, which is Frank Knight and Friedrich Hayek on the issue of capital. And soon enough, we'll have Friedman involved because he's picking up the Frank Knight idea of capital. And it's important to note that Friedman and Frank Knight were colleagues at the University of Chicago. And Frank Knight was a very dominant figure there. And we'll see that with Stigler's book and so on as we go along. He's very dominant there. He's very emphatic about just how to theorize about capital. And I can tell you at this point that there was a time in late 40s or 1950, along in there somewhere, where where Hayek was trying to get a position at the University of Chicago in the economics department. And it turns out that they wouldn't have him. They wouldn't have him, and they wouldn't have him because of his capital theory. They didn't want someone who was the author